Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fate's Wide Wheel. I'm your host, Sam Fain, and I am joined by JJ Lendl, and we are here today to talk about Sliders, Season 3, Episode 12, Season's Greetings, the Christmas episode. JJ, can you give me your best Sliders whisper?
Sliders.
Nice.
Was that
Well
good?
done. That was good. That was very good.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was on Fandom Entanglement for the episode Double Cross, which you and I actually spoke about just out of the blue the other day,
Yes.
unprompted, which was very funny. Damon asked me to do that, and it took me a moment because I was like, "What is he talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, right, right. I know what he's talking about." But
Yes.
but it did. It took
Why
me
would
off
I
guard.
whisper it?
I was like, why does he want me to whisper Sliders? And I was like, oh God, you idiot. That's why he wants you to whisper Sliders.
That's great.
So
That's
anyway,
great.
so I have this amazing artwork, this poster that you have done. We teased the sort of the thumbnail for this episode on a teaser episode that was released a little while back, but this is the actual full poster that I have up right now, which includes all the credits and includes the little tagline there. You talked about the devising this poster, and I loved how you kind of came up with it. Can you talk a little bit about the transition between doing this portrait mode in the poster and then transferring that to a landscape sort of thumbnail for like a YouTube video? Because it is there are differences, small differences, but differences nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. If I were a more intelligent person than I am, then as many other artists are, then I would design a piece that would work for both, where I would have to make very little or no changes, which is not what I did. So I try to just focus on the piece at hand, which is usually in this portrait format. And then if I do have a need to make it in a landscape, generally what I like to do is to pull the key elements out of the initial portrait poster and then just try to rearrange them in a way that kind of keeps the spirit of the original while allowing it to fill the space of of a landscape version. And a lot of times I'll drop things too, like I dropped the tagline, I dropped the credits out of that just because it didn't seem like they were necessary, especially for the use of that art, which was more promotional in terms of like using in videos.
Sure.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, what I try not to do is add new elements between the two, because then for me that's kind of like opening a can of worms. But what I wanted to maintain was sort of the gimmick of the piece, and the gimmick of the piece is that the sky mall is on a cloud, and the cloud is what is creating the sort of uh, holder for the credits for the main episode title. And so keep that element, figure out where to put the cast. I had messed around with the idea of breaking the cast up for the landscape version, but decided that I liked the flow as it was. And I
Yeah.
didn't want to have to illustrate, the rest of Arturo's beard, which I would have had to have done
Right.
if I pulled them
Exactly.
apart. So again, just a little bit of laziness just built into that process. But that's basically it. I prefer this version, the portrait version, because it has the tagline and the credits, and I just feel like it's a little bit more of like a complete uh, version of the of the artwork.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think that gives more real estate to the faces of our stars, which is great. The one thing that I will say that I do enjoy about the landscape version is that there is a cleanness to it because you don't have any of the text. Although I love the tagline and I love being able to have that movie poster feel with our credits there. But it also gives a little bit more real estate to the shopping mall in the sky, and I do kind of like getting a little bit more of that. That said, I think that the poster it's a poster for a reason, and it just looks great, and it's the type of thing that like I want to hang that on my wall. Whereas the thumbnail, I don't really want to hang that on my wall. It
There
looks
you go.
great, I like it, but this is something that I want to put on the wall. So,
Well,
um,
that's nice.
yeah, absolutely. So I'm gonna make that go away right now.
Bye.
Not because we don't love it, but because I want to spend some time talking about the actual episode here. Now, it's been a while, frankly, since I've done something like this. I did kind of an off the cuff Superman review this past summer. I've been doing some unboxings and reviews of films like Hard Boiled, Jackie Chan films, Star Trek, the motion picture, a few other bits and baubles here and there. And by the time this comes out, full disclosure, it is Sunday, November the 16th, but this episode will actually probably not drop for a full month after that. So who knows what's happened in the 3-4 weeks in between. But
we'll both be completely gray by
yeah,
that
yeah.
time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, have we talked about the fact that we have children? Children
Right.
tends to do that to you, right? So I may be a little rusty, but hopefully we can bring this back. And this is the first time that we've ever talked about the show Sliders on this show proper. Anyway, it's been mentioned numerous times because, of course, it does have some common features with the little show that we used to talk a lot about here, which is Quantum Leap. There's definitely some similarities. And I did guest on Fandom Entanglement for their episode on Double Cross, as I mentioned earlier. So with that said, let's talk about season 3, episode 12 of Sliders, Season's Greetings. This was written by Aaliyah Howitz, directed by Richard Compton, music by Danny Lux, edited by Casey Brown, and of course starring Jerry O'Connell, John Rhys Davies, and don't fail me now, computer, get in front of me, Sabrina Lloyd and Clement Derricks, guest starring Chase Masterson, Neil Roberts, Alan Williams, Stuart Fratkin, Jacqueline Obradors, and this episode it sits in a very interesting place for me because while I am not overly familiar with Sliders, I have seen enough episodes to know. In fact, I actually watched the series premiere as it aired. I know, right? And I was thinking about this earlier, JJ, for the first of what I'm sure will be many digressions. In this day and age, that doesn't necessarily mean, I think, what it used to. Because there was a time when if you said, I watched that as it aired, it held like a little bit of meaning, right? Like it was almost like you were part of like a club that's like, I saw that when it happened kind of thing. Nowadays, with streaming and the way television is released, like that doesn't really happen as much anymore. Like, sure, you can binge it over the weekend along with millions and millions of other people. And in some ways, it's more of a communal experience than ever. But you could have started watching it, at 9 a.m. when it was convenient for you, whereas your friends were watching it at 4 p.m. and then you get together and talk about it the next day. But with something, in the old days, back in my day, you had to watch things at a specific time when it aired, or you didn't see it unless you happen to set your VCR.
Well, that's the thing. You had to put a lot of trust into that VCR.
Yes, you did.
And your ability to operate it.
Yes.
And people in your house's ability not to mess with it between when you set it and when everybody left the house.
Because here's the thing. This is, again, something that a lot of younger listeners, if there are any younger listeners out there, might not quite understand is that
really big with the tweens. I know,
you had, you had to set a timer on the VCR, and then you had to remember to turn the power on the VCR off.
Yes.
And the thing about that is depending on how you connected your cable, that meant that you might not be able to actually watch your cable television while the VCR was powered off. So
yes, right.
You had to be very thoughtful about this process. Yes. Otherwise you might miss it.
Absolutely. So in our house, if memory serves, we had cable, so we had a cable box. Mm-hmm. And so, we could leave the TV itself off, but if we left the house, but as long as the cable box was on and which the VCR was connected to,
right,
then we were good.
Yeah.
But you had to be sure to have the cable box on the right channel.
Right.
Because if you didn't, you were just going to be recording whatever happened to be on the cable box before you turn the TV off. So this all sounds like nonsense.
I know.
To anybody who, was born after like 1996 when this episode aired, but this was really, if you wanted to watch a TV show in the mid 90s, you had to do the work. You really had to do the work.
That's right.
Or you had to be there for it.
This was real life.
And if you missed an episode, you had to hope that over the summer that was one of the episodes that they would show in reruns.
Yeah, because they didn't even rerun the whole season.
No, no,
No, no,
because there weren't that many weeks to do that.
exactly.
So this, to bring it back to season's greetings, and I'm going to really try to hit that D in greetings to
Yes,
make
thank
sure that
you.
we
I've
have the
been
full
lazy with it.
the
I've been
full
lazy
pun.
with it.
No, it's just really want to make sure that the work the writers did is reflected in this
Oh, we're
review.
going to talk about the work the writers did.
Oh yes, I remember watching this live as it aired. And it was, I guess it was like right before Christmas in '96. So I think I would have been in fifth grade at that point.
Hmm.
So just to show my bona fides, I was not present for the premiere of the show like you. I mean, you're
Right.
a
Yeah.
true, you
Well,
know, you're
yes.
an
I
original slider.
So
Yes.
I was I would have been 15 when this episode aired. It
Okay.
was I believe it aired on December 20th, so 5 short days before Christmas of
There you go.
1996. And that particular time, I believe I would have been on Christmas break, but we would have just wrapped up a production of It's a Wonderful Life at my
Look at
high
you.
school. I know,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
In which I portrayed Mr. Gower, and the voice of Joseph.
Remind me
So
who is Mr. Gower in
he's the
the show?
druggist who
He's the druggist.
yeah, almost accidentally poisons a whole family because he's sad
That's
because his son died, and he slaps
right.
George around, and but then he buys the
Yes.
suitcase for him, and yeah.
There you go. Right.
I was
Role you were born to
devastated.
play.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was devastated at not being George, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway,
It's okay.
so yeah, so I would have been 15 at the time that this aired. I don't recall watching it. It's possible that I did, but I don't remember watching it. To be completely honest, and one of the reasons why I said I'm not overly familiar with the show is that I don't I don't genuinely remember watching this show a lot. I do remember that premiere episode. I remember, a few scattered episodes here and there that I caught from time to time. But I don't believe I've seen the full series, honestly. I do own the DVDs now, which is all because of Damon, because when he had me on the show, I was sort of like, I'd like to watch Sliders. I know that I'm apparently, I guessed it on an episode which was kind of one of the last really good ones, and then everything from there on out was pretty terrible. Um,
Well, yeah. I mean, I was. This was appointment TV for me at the
yeah.
time. This was my favorite show on television during its first, couple of seasons. I think I got into the show during the first hiatus, so I don't think I
Hmm.
watched any of the first season as it aired. I think I caught reruns in the interim. The show has a weird history because it was a mid-season replacement, and then it was a mid-season replacement again, which
Yeah.
doesn't usually happen. Usually, if a show is successful as a mid-season replacement, like Quantum Leap,
Right.
it'll get a full episode order for a second season. It didn't happen with Sliders. So
Mm-mm.
we have two half seasons, and then this season, which season's Greetings appears, is the first full episode order for a season, the season three,
Yeah.
which, as you're alluding to, brought some issues to the to the production and changes to the show. Um, but I watched all of season two live and was very excited for season three. And of course, as we were getting into season three, even at my young age, I could tell that this show was changing in some way. And the story goes that, Fox, as was their way at the time, had a heavy hand in the production. And they wanted certain things in certain ways, which didn't necessarily mesh with the showrunners and the way that the show was conceived. And by season three, they had brought in a new showrunner to sort of basically shepherd the show along in a way that focused more on action rather than sci-fi elements. Um, and there was also issues when it came to budget, and how the budgets were spent. And so as you're going through this season, you can see the show kind of devolving in a way. I would argue. But this, I will say, season's greetings. This episode, I think, I remember way back in the day, the early days of online on like Sliders message boards, folks would sort of speculate about an alternate version of the third season if it had been another half season order. And as a way of like, if you could choose half of these episodes to keep to make a really solid, third season of Sliders, which would you choose? And this one was on just about every list of fans. So
Yeah.
I would say, in terms of quality, compared to a lot of the other episodes, especially that would follow, I think this one is definitely above average. That being said, you know, this episode certainly has a lot of problems, and something that I watched this with my wife Skylar, and she was kind of flabbergasted by by some of the choices that were made from a
Hmm.
production level. And
Sure.
what I always say to her is like, it's strange to imagine that at one point this show aired on like the same night as the X-Files, which is
Right.
known for its basically like incredible like theatrical production quality. And then you have this show where like it almost feels like they're making it up as it goes along sometimes in terms of
Yeah.
like the staging and the set dressings and things
Camera
like that. It's
angles.
camera.
I know what
Yes.
was with
Yeah.
that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating episode for many reasons because I agree with your assessment that overall it feels above average compared to other episodes in this season, and even to some other Sliders episodes in general that I've seen. This one overall, it's a very solid effort, but I also think that it's a bit uneven, and I think the first half of the episode especially, there's some really really clunky dialogue, and even from the very beginning, it like one of the things that I immediately so they slide in,
Yeah.
and there are
Let's get to the story.
yeah,
Okay. Let's get to the meat of it.
so they slide in and immediately they're cracking jokes about what has happened prior to their slide, and they'd been on some pygmy world. Wade had looked at someone, and now that someone thought that because of that look that they that she belonged to him, and so they've been chased, etc. The thing
Yes.
about this though, and it immediately kind of set off alarm bells in my head, is every single character had to have a joke. Everyone had to have a remark. Like for me, one and done would have been fine. But no, 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 no. Everyone had to comment on it. And really, if I'm not mistaken, I think a couple of the characters had two. So we basically get six one-liners
Mm-hmm.
about this unseen adventure that has just taken place. And and all of them are cringy at best. And had we gotten one, I would have been able to kind of roll with it and be like, they got jokes. But because we get these six awful one-liners that even the actors coming out of their mouths, they're just, you can just tell that it's like, really, I gotta say this shit. Like it just that was the vibe that I got. And no offense to them, they were doing their best, but there was this element of just kind of like, oh, okay, that's what we're gonna, that's how we're setting this up, huh?
It's almost like a trope of the show. You know, when when an episode starts, oftentimes they have just left a world, and what's so funny is that they're usually describing a world that the show would not have the production budget to show on
Right.
screen. So, so I feel like part of going on about it is a way to like, we were really there. Like we were really there. Like I know we couldn't show you that, like,
Yeah.
but we were totally there. And I will say that I think there are this show. I was talking earlier about the show shifting with this season, and there were a lot of light comedic elements to the show in seasons 1 and 2. That was
Yeah.
sort of, you know, a staple of the show, is that it played a lot of moments for comedy, and the actors were incredibly good at playing those moments.
Absolutely.
But it's about finding that tone, and I think that tone is the thing that this season has absolutely no concept of.
Yeah.
And even in this episode, like you said, you start the episode with cracking jokes, and then suddenly we're in a melodrama
Yeah.
because the characters end up walking into some kind of chapel or a church. Uh, Wade, Sabrina Lloyd's character, wants to say a prayer, And suddenly they are thrust into a situation where Professor Arturo is handed a baby by a woman who said she wants to light a candle, and then she disappears. And so
Yeah.
suddenly, this baby has been abandoned in the Slider's arms as we cut to credits. And so, again, you're sort of like, okay, this show at its best, sort of like it's sci-fi, but it's sci-fi with a little bit of an edge in
Right.
terms of like looking at things from sort of like a satirical, sometimes very sarcastic perspective. And now we're sort of plunged into this, melodrama.
Yeah, it's interesting because you're right. There's this farcical element with the one-liners that we mentioned, and even the way that they're played feel kind of uneven, right? Like it's like, are they sarcastic? Are they angry? Are they relieved? Like the tone, like you said, is all over the place, and then the tone shifts again at the chapel and the baby getting abandoned. And I just want to say real quick, there is a version of this episode where it's about the Sliders having to watch after this baby.
Yeah,
There's a version
right.
of this, but that doesn't happen because the baby gets abandoned again, basically,
Yes,
and
yes, absolutely.
the Sliders are off to the shopping mall in the sky.
Yeah, four
Um,
four sliders and a baby.
right. And
Yes,
I just want to say right off the bat that one of the things that is overwhelmingly clear in this episode and in the series total is that John Rhys Davies exceeds all material that he
oh
is
my
given,
gosh.
all
Yeah,
situations that he is put in. The man is brilliant. He brings such gravitas to this show. I talked a little bit about this during Double Cross because there's some really interesting stuff in that episode with him. But even in this episode, he gets some great stuff. And
yeah,
while it's easy to kind of say that this is Wade's episode. I feel like there is a nice balance played, especially with Rembrandt, Wade, and Arturo. Uh, Quinn gets some stuff, sure, but like overall, it feels like the three of them get a little bit more, and he's just so good.
yeah, absolutely.
It's just he's a joy to watch.
Yes, and again, by the end of this season, he is no longer a member of the cast, which
Right.
is, if the show hadn't jumped the shark before that, it certainly jumped it after. But
Yeah.
I would say that the saving grace of this season is the cast, who will, and certainly John Rhys Davies principally among them. They'll elevate the material. They work very well together. You know, uh, Clement Derricks I think he's great. He, especially when he has a chance to play comedy, he's
Hmm.
wonderful. I think everybody is really great, and they have a really great dynamic with one another. And when the episodes lead into that, I think that they're more successful.
Yeah.
Um, so I, I think that the cast is sort of the show's saving grace at the end, and I think the cast was, beyond the cool concept of the show, like visiting different versions of the world and meeting different versions of yourself or your friends or your family. I think that the cast is what kept people coming back every week this season.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, the professor is such a huge part of that. So, in the story of the show, so the Sliders, they try to chase this woman down. They see that she gets onto an employee shuttle to a nearby mall, as far as they know, and they get the priest from the chapel that said, "Hey, we got this baby," and the priest is like, "I'm gonna, we got to get rid of this baby,
Yeah.
guys. Like, we got to get rid of this
Oh,
baby." And Arturo's like, we slide in 2 days. Give us 2 days. If you could just watch this baby for 2 days, let us see if we can find this mother and bring her back. And the priest is like, okay, if you're not back in 2 days, I'm throwing this baby in the garbage can, but I'll give you 2 days. And off they go to the Sky Mall,
yeah.
the literal
Literally.
Sky Mall. Yes, which is sort of like, you know, when my wife and I were watching, she was like, "Why is the mall in a cloud?" Was her
Right.
was her question.
Yeah.
And my answer to her was, well, it's a sci-fi show there, so there has to be a sci-fi element, and that's really all I could think of,
Yeah.
because I don't know, maybe one of the writers had seen the Star Trek original series episode, The Cloud Minders, recently, Like, we should put something up in a cloud.
Yeah, or the
We could do that.
Jetsons, or
There you go.
Empire Strikes Back, or
There,
who knows? Yeah,
exactly.
anything.
Yes.
It,
Yes.
it is interesting because, again, one of the things that always fascinates me about the show is that the time does not change. Like, they're not in the future, they're
No.
just on a parallel world. And while there are episodes where things are very futuristic, or sometimes they're not, they're anachronistic, but there's always there's a difference, right? There's some sort
Yeah.
of difference in the world in which they're in, and a lot of times it seems like the worlds that they slide to, there are technological advances beyond our own.
Sure. Yeah.
And in this instance, yeah, we get the Sky Mall. And one of the things that has kind of gone off the rails in this particular world is consumerism and greed and capitalism,
And I'm watching it. I'm like, how is this world any different than our world?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
guys? I think you're home.
Right.
Maybe you just forgot about the Sky Mall stuff. Yes, I actually think Double Cross is a really good episode for what you're talking about, because that world has a lot of advanced technology, yet it also has all of these dystopian kind of elements
Yes.
to it,
Right.
in terms of lack of resources. So to really illustrate what kind of situations the Sliders can find themselves in. Yeah, this world seemed to be very similar to their own world, save for a more supercharged consumer culture.
Mm-hmm.
And that is brought home when they go up into the Sky Mall, and one of the first folks that they meet are actually the doubles of Wade's older sister and father,
Yeah.
who happen to, which is something that happens in Sliders all the time,
Naturally.
who happen to work at the Sky Mall, and who happen to be passing by at the moment when they're trying to purchase food and realize that they don't have the correct currency for that world.
Yeah.
They need a special debit card that you can only get if you are an employee of the Sky Mall. And luckily, Wade's sister is, the assistant to the president of the mall, and is able to hook them up with jobs. Now, you mentioned that on the night that this show aired, you were in a production of It's a Wonderful Life. And this is where we bring the It's a Wonderful Life element into the episode, because Wade realizes that in this world, her older sister's here, her father's here, but they don't recognize her.
Yeah.
And Wade doesn't exist in this world. So she gets to see what the world would be like if she wasn't in it. Very It's a Wonderful Life-esque.
Yeah, it's interesting because here's the thing. The overall story and the script itself is fine. The dialogue choices are sometimes just it's almost as if I have to put words in people's mouths in order to get to this scene that I wrote that is good. And
it's like a first draft.
And I don't want to point any fingers at anyone. I know that the writer has a credit, and that's fine. I'm not saying that that's that she's responsible for all of this or whatever. But the weird thing is that there's some dialogue here when Quinn kind of confronts Wade about, saying hi to her sister and her dad, which is also kind of weird to me, because I'm thinking, like, but it's not them.
Right. Which is sort of what Wade's trying to say. But yes, the clunky dialogue you're talking about is where Quinn is like, Wade steps aside when she realizes who that is. And she says, I don't want to deal with this right now. Because obviously, she hasn't seen her family in, I think, over a year at this point. I'm not sure exactly how much time has passed since the first episode, even though we're in season 3, because I don't think that we are exactly, lined up with the,
it's not necessarily been 3 years. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I think it certainly has not been 3 years at this point. But then Quinn sort of has this really long sentence about, yeah, sure, like, why wouldn't you want to spend the holidays with your family?
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, coming in pretty hot there, Quinn, for, but for someone who's trying to explain that this is hard for them.
Yeah, and and not to get too far ahead of ourselves or anything, but just because I don't want people to think that I'm going to spend the next 20 minutes or whatever just railing against this episode, I will say that Sabrina Lloyd specifically, but the episode even as a whole, overcomes a lot of this, which I think is a testament to the fact that the story itself is good and strong, and there's dialogue coming later that works. There are still a couple of weird situations where I'm just kind of like, okay, I get it. this has to happen in order for this to happen. But for me personally, I'm not a fan of that, right? Like, I don't want to watch something and be like, I don't want to have to kind of forgive something that's not that great just because it gets us from point A to point B, and and the journey there is but once we get to point B, ooh, you're gonna like this. It's like, no,
Right.
like, it doesn't necessarily have to make sense, but at least make it hold together, make it strong,
Right.
make it more than the sum of its parts. And so but that said, she does eventually turn around to kind of confront them, and then realizes, yeah, like you said, they don't recognize her. Her sister Kelly is played by Chase Masterson, so right off the bat, like,
DS9 fans.
absolutely. Lita the Dabo girl. And it's great to see her in this role, I think, because there's a grounded quality and a little bit more of a serious quality to this character than a lot of other characters I've seen her play, quite
Yeah.
frankly.
Yeah.
And it just feels very real and very, very honest. And I think that the dynamic that builds between her and Wade, especially because she doesn't know who Wade is, it's actually very well done. And there's also this weird kind of romantic, naturally, of course there is, tension with Quinn, because it's Sliders and Quinn is a hunk, and apparently
Right.
every woman that we meet has to have a thing for Quinn, and he has
But
to
it's so interesting because
reciprocate.
Quinn knows this person from his world.
Right.
He recognizes her. So I'm like,
Yeah.
Quinn, were you trying to get with your friend's older sister at some point? Like,
right.
totally
Right.
natural, I would imagine. But,
Of course.
yeah.
But the interesting thing is I had to look this up because, again, not being super familiar with the show, I didn't know. But this is the first time that we ever actually see Wade's sister and father.
Yeah,
We've
absolutely.
not actually seen them prior to this. So it is interesting that we get to see them in this episode, that Quinn does recognize them, that we have this kind of, drama play out.
Yes.
Don't
worry, we'll never see them again.
Right. Much like in Double Cross, where we never see Quinn's, female double again. And it's like, oh man, what a missed opportunity.
Continuity. Who needs it?
Yeah.
People like episodic television. Don't get weighed down by things like backstory.
But then through a matter of circumstances, just because JJ's done a wonderful job of keeping us on track, but as the host of the show, I want to at least show that I can still do that too. Matter of happenstance, they all get jobs, and Arturo is, of course, Santa Claus. Remy and Wade are elves, as is Quinn for a while, but then
there's just this random scene where, again, Wade's sister's just like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
You're super hot.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you in a suit.
Right.
Okay.
Right now you're kind of punching below your weight, so why don't you come up with me?
It's not clear what Quinn's job is. It's just he wears a suit and he has access to the things that the plot needs him to have access to.
Yeah.
Is basically what it comes down to. So.
Yes. The professor, it's wonderful because he really embraces the role of Santa Claus, and he's having so much fun talking to these kids and telling these kids stories, and it's just really well done. And he gets a great scene with the mother when they find her again, and he has a couple of scenes with her actually, but we'll get there in a second. Now they all have jobs, they're all embedded in this new system. They're discovering that half of everyone's pay goes to their housing. They have to spend so much of their pay at the mall, and basically they take home like $20 a day.
Yes.
And that's it.
And this starts to explain something that they saw as they entered the mall.
Yeah.
There was an employee who was running for the escalator and who suddenly stops, grabs his wrist, where he's wearing some sort of wrist contraption, and he falls over in pain. And then he's picked up by mall security and carried away. And they're all just kind of like, that was weird. Well, let's keep going. The plot calls. They begin to realize that there is a system going on at this Sky Mall in which the employees, like you said, have to give a certain amount of their money back through purchases, but then can also build debt by doing this. So they can basically put things on credit if they want to buy things. And this leads to basically the crux of the episode, and it leads to an explanation as to why this mother left her child behind. But before the professor discovers this, we get to hear John Rhys Davies deliver all this dialogue that's like anti-consumerism,
Yeah.
and these kids, all they care about are gifts, and he seems to decide to like, I, as Santa Claus working at this mall over the next 48 hours, will end consumerism in this world.
Yeah.
And he does a pretty good job, to
He
be honest.
does. Yes, he forms an unruly mob of children singing Christmas carols, to fight the man. It's really
Yes.
it's great, and it's one of the things about this episode that stands in such stark contrast to some of the clunkier elements is here's this really charming, really fun and funny, but also it speaks as a wonderful bit of commentary on the entire theme of the episode, bit that plays out over the course of the episode, and it's just really well done. So it's weird to me because it's, again, like I said, it stands in such stark contrast to the other elements of the episode that feel so like, you know in your face, and odd choices for dialogue, and odd choices for other moments. For instance, when Wade's father, who doesn't know that it's Wade, is inviting to cook chili for her and invited, it's weird, man. Like,
Yeah.
I gotta be
Yeah.
honest, there's a moment when she's like looking at the Christmas tree and looking at a picture of her mother when he doesn't know that it's her or whatever, and there's a moment when I'm just sort of like, oh god, he's not gonna like make a pass at her, is he?
Like
Because it
old
really
boy
starts,
stuff going on here.
yeah, like you remind me so much of my deceased wife or whatever. It was
Yes.
just, the vibe was very off, and I don't know, maybe it was the actor, maybe it was,
Well,
maybe it's the context of the times in which we
right.
live today. I don't know. It just felt a little weird to me. And instead it was another one of those moments of, no, we have to get Wade and him together, because that is what her character development requires in order for us to
Yes.
get to,
Right.
the end of the episode kind of thing.
But it does kind of look like it is a Back to the Future scenario, and the
Right.
dad has a crush on his not daughter. But that doesn't seem to enter into the brains of anybody
Thank
on
goodness,
the show.
no.
Yes, just us perverts watching it.
Yeah.
My wife brought that up first. She was like, "This is not
Oh,
good.
good.
This is
Okay,
not kosher."
that's good to know.
I was like, "Yeah, it's a little awkward." So yes, Wade has this moment where she walks past her not dad, and drops her entire tray of food immediately.
Yeah.
And when he asks like why that happened, she says, "You keep staring at me." It's just like, again, you guys know what this sounds like.
Yeah, it's like, come on, guys.
Yeah, so this begins this kind of story arc, like you said, where she goes back and he makes dinner, and they have this moment, and the whole thing is that Wade has her mother's eyes and also her sister's eyes, which is pretty good casting because they both have kind of very, very dark brown.
I buy them.
Like
I buy them
eyes.
as sisters.
Yep,
I buy them
absolutely.
as sisters. Yeah, yeah.
I actually think that Chase is younger than Sabrina Lloyd.
Oh, really?
In real life.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
But she plays older. She definitely plays older.
Yeah.
We should introduce another character, which is your typical British slimeball.
Oh, yeah.
He plays Wade's sister's boss. He's in charge of the mall.
Yep.
He is, very clearly, the uber capitalist. He is, very obsessed with the mall running well, there being profits. And Wade's dad, not dad, you can tell he has an issue. He has an issue with this guy and what this guy's doing to his daughter, and how he's making his daughter sort of be this sort of corporate slime in the same way that he is. And so that's sort of that's the dad's cross to bear, and that's what he sort of opens up with this random young woman who looks a lot like his deceased wife in their home as he cooks her a nice intimate dinner.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's
okay.
Fine.
It's totally fine. Totally fine. Yeah. No, and we get some lines about how I don't even know who you are anymore, and all that kind of cliched stuff. And it again, I get it. It's easy enough to excuse because where it ends up does feel good, I suppose. But there's clearly something afoot in this relationship. Things aren't going well. But the weird thing is when we're first introduced to the characters, it almost feels like, Dad Wells is on board with all of this. Like, he's fine with everything. You know, it's not until we get a little further into the episode that we discover that, like, he's not happy with the way things are. He doesn't like it personally. He especially doesn't like what it's turning his daughter into. He doesn't believe that his, you know, his deceased wife, Wade's mom, would have, you know, been on board with any of this. And I will say that in spite of there being this odd, you know, almost creep ick factor to the whole dinner scene, that there is some really nice stuff in there. And I think Sabrina Lloyd in particular does a really great job with kind of navigating the oddness of the situation of this, you know, being hanging out with my dad, but he's not actually my
Right.
dad. Getting,
Yeah.
you know, she's clearly getting some sort of emotional sustenance from this. And yet it's also driven home a number of times that this isn't what she gets at home. This isn't what she gets with her real dad, with her real sister, with, you know, and so it's interesting to me. And I can't help but think that had we been able to maybe spend more time with it, had this been something that was revisited or explored later, that the ramifications of this kind of short term positive would not necessarily lead to a long term, you know, thing for her. Like if anything, it could honestly lead to a little bit more resentment of her reality, of her actual situation, right? It's like, here I am in a world that's not even my own, where I don't even exist, and I'm able to experience a closeness with these people that I can't even have in my own reality. um and that would have
Yes.
been a neat thing to explore. But
Yeah.
again, it's not serialized television. We were never going to get there. It's all about making people feel good for the holidays. So instead,
Right.
you know,
And
let's
action,
yeah.
action, action. Season
And
3 is all
yes,
about action.
right,
And it
right.
really is, you know, continuity was always this show's Achilles heel from the very beginning. The first season was aired out of order to the
Mm,
point where audiences didn't understand what was happening in terms of how the elements of the show worked. Like,
yeah.
they didn't air the second episode after the first episode. They aired like the fourth or fifth episode. So people didn't understand when they were sitting down and watching the second episode of the show, like, what's going on with this device? Why are they
Mm-hmm.
waiting for it to count down? Because that's something that is set up in the second episode that was produced, which wasn't aired until later. And so continuity was sort of the thing that could have made this show successful, but it was
Yeah.
the thing that became very clear that, you know, Fox was not interested in it having, because it just wanted to air whatever episodes it wanted to out of order.
Yeah.
Um, and especially in this third season, much like the X Files, which moved its production from Vancouver after season 5 to Los Angeles, Sliders moved from Vancouver to Los Angeles for this season, season 3,
Yeah.
which meant that there were some reoccurring characters uh, that were seen throughout seasons 1 and 2. People that they would encounter on different worlds, and you could play with the idea of there being different versions of them. You know, like a stoner that Quinn went to school with, a guy that worked at the hotel that they would always stay at. And those characters were completely dropped this season because they didn't want to fly them in from Canada.
Yeah.
So there was even less continuity in this season than there had been before. And yeah, I think you're right. Like, having some continuity of these characters either showing up before or again would have been great for the show overall. But that just, you know, Fox made it very clear that that was not the assignment.
Right. Well, and I think that, you know, one of the things that struck me about this episode too is that there were some similarities, and not intentional and not overt, but again, you know, it's something that I talked a lot about. If you go back to the first, you know, 200 episodes of this podcast, uh, that reminded me of A Leap Home Part One, where Sam goes back and is at his home for Thanksgiving, and especially with Wade getting the opportunity to interact with these characters and kind of make up for moments that she didn't necessarily get with her actual family. The difference there is that it felt like the weight and the impact of those moments in Quantum Leap did actually kind of carry over. I mean, obviously into the very next episode, but even throughout the series, there was, you know, there were kind of elements and harkening back to the idea that, like, the, you know, how important Sam's family was to him. And in this, it's kind of like we get these moments with Wade, we get some character development, but one of the, you know, a couple of the reviews that I read of this episode online, you know, just talked, oh, character development, oh, it's such a breath of fresh air, blah 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 blah. And there was a part of me that said, well, can we really consider it character development if it's one and done? is this really developing a character, or
Sure.
is this just putting a character into a dramatic situation to have character moments? But is it really
Yeah.
development because it doesn't actually further the character?
Well, I think if you're watching it live, you don't know because you're
Right.
hoping, okay, maybe we'll build on this. But I think that, unfortunately, knowing the episodes that preceded this, I think that the term character development really is just referring to moments where characters are connecting in a
Right.
way that is not like, we've got to get out of this situation immediately.
Yes, and I think that that's the key for me, right? And maybe it's just a language, a semantics thing here, because ultimately it's a character driven episode as opposed to it
Yeah,
being fully plot driven.
sure.
Because the truth
And,
of the matter
yeah,
is that the plot actually kind of takes a bit of a back seat. I mean, the whole like we got to find the baby's mom, we got to do this, we got to do that, we got to do all that. Again, the episode tends to be more character driven than it is plot driven. Um, for better and for worse, I guess. In some ways, one of the things that gets a little muddy for me is like, what are they accomplishing? Like
sure.
do they really like do they cause the consumeristic like nature of this place to crumble, and what effect is that going to have? Like, has the proletariat really revolted against the man, and are we actually going to get like,
Well,
revolution in the streets
yeah.
here, or is it just the idea of like, we're forgiving, this is debt forgiveness, we've forgiven your debt, you can go home for Christmas, you don't have to work 24 hours a day anymore, what, like that was the other thing, is it's like, what exactly did they accomplish, through this
Right.
episode.
Well, you're getting ahead of yourself, Sam.
I am.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Hey, let's talk about Arturo's scenes with the mother whose
Yes.
name is escaping me real quick. Carol. Oh,
Carol. Yeah.
Christmas Carol.
Get it?
Yeah.
Subtle.
So he has some really lovely scenes with her, and one of them is fairly like combative, and she runs away from him, but then eventually he sits down with her and they have this really wonderful conversation, and he talks about his own circumstances during World War II, and it's a really dark
It's
monologue.
really dark moment. He just kind of lays it on you, like,
Yeah.
and he does it in a way where a lot of actors would have tried to really soak up that moment and be like, well, when I was a boy,
Mm-hmm.
I was staying with my aunts. But he just kind of, it's like he just wants to get through it. He
Yeah.
wants to say this. And it's interesting because there's just a little line, as a throwaway line early in the episode, when it's very clear that Arturo is invested in finding this woman.
Yeah.
And Quinn and Wade look at each other, and Wade is kind of like, is was the professor, was he adopted? Like, and and Quinn's like, if he was, he never told me. Like, just trying to figure out, why is he so single minded about trying to figure this out? And they don't
Yeah.
really mention it again. It's just sort of like this moment that plants the seed of like, why is he so like? Surely he would not just be invested out of the kindness of his heart to try and reunite this baby with their
Right.
mother.
Right.
So they plant that little seed, and then this is where it blossoms into this tragic backstory of a very young, professor, not a professor at that point, I assume, and his father's fighting in the war in India. He's staying with his aunts out in the countryside, and the house is bombed. His aunts are killed. He's found in his dead mother's arms by the authorities. They
Well,
are
I
unable
mean,
to.
he literally says my mother's body was pulled off of me,
Yes,
like, she shielded
yes,
him, like, and
right.
again, it's a very explicit, and again, like you said, in a different actor's hands, I think it would have been a very different kind of monologue, but as it is, it's just so matter of fact, and
Yeah,
so, you know it's like, I don't have to do any work here because the words are going to do it for me, and
sure.
and John Rhys Davies gets that, and he doesn't try to make a meal out of it, and because of that, it is even more chilling in some ways, and it's also, the other thing is, it's also not the point,
Right,
and I think that's the thing
right.
that's beautiful, right, is it
He's pleading a case.
yeah,
Is he's not trying to, this is not
drum
my
up
my
sympathy,
story. Right.
yeah,
He's trying to say, the reason why I am so single minded about you and your child being together is because of the experience that I have. And I
Right.
know that he will think about this for the rest of his life. If you don't do everything you can to be with me, he will wonder why you did this, and he
You can
just won't know.
save your child from having my
Yes,
experience. Yeah.
right, exactly,
And it's interesting because, you know, and this is, again, this is a smart part of this script, right? You know, for the knocks I've given it, I feel like this is a really smart choice. Carol's not 100% sold. Like
right.
she's not, yes, I mean, she's in tears. Yes, she's moved, but there's still some hesitation on her part. There's still kind of this element of like, I don't know what you expect me to do. You
Right.
know,
And I think that there's shame as well, because
yes.
as we learn, as we learn more about the machinations of this world, is that she is in debt. And she is in debt that she is feels that she is responsible for personally. And to a certain extent, and we see this with a lot of, like, in the real world with a lot of mothers, it's like, I think that they would be better off without me because
Yeah.
I am not the ideal parent.
Right.
And, what he's trying to say to her is that that is irrelevant to the fact you're his mother.
Yeah.
And but as we learn, the system, as Bernie Sanders would say, is rigged against them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Quite literally.
quite literally, as we begin to understand, when let's bring in another character's story, the C plot.
Right. Yeah.
Um, Rembrandt, the Crying Man Brown, has become quite obsessed with watching the commercials that are constantly playing in the hotel and all around on screens at the mall. And he has begun buying dozens of gifts for his friends.
Yes.
Um, and he and
24
Quinn,
present. No, no, 30, 38 presents altogether.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And when he realizes that he's gotten less presents for Wade than he has for Quinn and the professor, he runs out to buy more, at which point Quinn tries to stop him. And Rembrandt gets a little aggressive. He says,
Yeah.
get out of my way. Don't tell me, who I'm allowed to buy presents for, which seems a little odd. And as they begin to look into this, they realize that uh, the slime bag, the president,
Yeah. Ted.
has Ted, of course, Ted, he has been using subliminal messaging in the ads in order to get both customers and employees to spend more than they earn, which basically, as the professor says, it creates a class of slaves in this world that
Yeah.
are, indebted to him and the mall and the company, and basically will be forever, like indentured servitude, forever trying to work off this debt that they can never possibly work off.
Yeah.
And the wristbands that they use to keep you in the mall are basically chains.
Yeah.
So this episode, I think that it does a lot. And I think it does. I think probably the issues that we're getting to here is that it tries to do too much
Mm-hmm.
for 40, 42, 43 minutes of network television.
Yeah.
um,
I agree, and I think that there are some choices that get made along the way where I can't help but feel like the scene where Rembrandt is writing down his Christmas list and watching the TV very aggressively and very intently, and this is when the professor calls him out at first before Quinn gets to him, and that scene to me is just too much. Like it goes on a couple of seconds longer than it needs to be. Like if it was half as long, it's like it drops a warning sign in, and it's like something's not right here, but
yeah.
because it goes on too long, it tips its hand too much, and it's kind of like I think I would have much preferred had you just shortened that up, had we just, because again, like Clement Derricks is just perfect in that moment. Like
Mhm.
the actor tells the story, and somewhere along the way, whether it's a director or an editor or a network head or whatever, somebody, because there's some ADR that's thrown in inexplicably towards the end of it as well, and it's just sort of like it didn't need any of that. It didn't need the
Yeah.
ADR line. It didn't need as long of that scene. Like there's just enough where it's like we see his mania, we see the professor's concern. That's all it needed to be. And that would be enough for me as a viewer to be like, something's not right. I don't know what's going on here. And then when Quinn came in and they had that scene, it would have built even more on top of that. And then when the professor discovers the subliminal messaging, it would have kind of come full circle. And then we get some wonderful scenes with Rembrandt kind of making up to everybody. And I just feel like it's those little missteps that take away from the overall and cause the episode, like you said, to kind of at times not completely crumble. I don't want to be that harsh, but start to certainly fracture under the weight of all of this stuff that's going
Sure.
on that it can't seem to balance, like you said, in those 42 minutes.
I think that when the way I would describe a lot of this season of Sliders when you watch it, more so than other shows that were made in the era, because again, like this was the era of network television seasons that were 24, 26 episodes. The schedules were crazy. They were, shooting constantly throughout the year. They were writing tons of episodes on these shows. But th- this this show, for some reason, feels like it is made under duress,
Mm,
and you can feel it in the scenes. You can
hmm.
feel that this scene wasn't quite staged perfectly. You
Yeah.
could feel that these camera setups weren't quite right. There's a
Yep.
scene where it's between Quinn and Wade's sister, where there isn't an establishing shot, and it
No,
looks
and
like the
just
two
this
people are in
weird
different places at first. Yeah, and
angles
strange
and
camera angles. That's a
so
director's
weird,
choice.
but it
But it
doesn't make
doesn't seem to fit the
sense.
material. Yeah,
No.
so it does seem like the show is made under duress,
Yeah.
and it's not a well-oiled machine. It's not like other shows of the era, like Quantum Leap or The X Files, where you don't sit down and watch those shows and you're not having to suspend disbelief over the production
Right.
quality.
Yes.
But
Yes.
with Sliders, you do,
Yeah.
and I think this is a show that would have benefited if it had a very strong hand at the wheel.
Yeah.
Like a Belisario or a Pratt or like a Chris Carter, just
Yeah.
somebody who knew what they were doing
Mm-hmm.
and who understood the the concept of the show, who had sort of the language in order to work with all the different departments on the series to get what they needed in the right amount of time to polish these scripts. But I think what you're seeing is just a show that was kind of cobbled together every week throughout the season,
Yeah.
and you see these fractures when you sit down and watch the episode. As a fan of the show, you want to try and like ignore that stuff.
Of
Okay,
course.
that's kind of a weird camera angle. Okay, that scene, the pacing was off. Okay, like that performance from that one or two line character was like something out of like a community theater production,
Yep.
like
Yep. Yep.
stuff that you just wouldn't see in other shows.
Yeah.
And you want to focus on the good stuff. And I feel like we're focusing on a lot of the like very positive aspects of this episode. But for an average viewer who sits down, on a Friday or a Sunday night to check out
Mm-hmm.
this show, they're not going to want to ignore that stuff. That's the
No,
thing that's going to jump out at them.
and especially when we are living now 25 years into the era of prestige television, right? The
Yeah,
thing is in 1996, when this episode aired, you didn't have The Sopranos, you didn't have The Wire, you didn't have Game of Thrones, you didn't have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, we now, the television landscape, Stranger Things, is so incredibly different than it ever has been. And I think that if you approach this episode with 2025 eyes, you can see the disappointments. They're a little bit more glaring because there's
yeah,
not the consistency, like you said. There's not a consistency in tone. There's not a consistency in production values. There's not a consistency in style,
yeah,
and that there seem to be mistakes. And I love the term that you use, made under duress, because it feels as though there's almost somebody else, whether it's network or whatever, there's almost somebody else who has a hand in this, who's saying, no, you need to do it this way. No, you need to get it done quicker. No, you need to do it that. No, you need to do it this. And because of that, it doesn't feel whole. It doesn't
right.
feel like there's any, singular eye giving it a cohesive bit of that extra zhuzh that it needs in this direction or that direction in order to feel like a whole, and instead just
Yeah,
kind of feels like all these disparate pieces thrown together. Now
it
luckily,
feels sloppy. Yeah,
it does. It feels sloppy. Now, luckily, we got the actors, and like you said,
yeah,
the thing that holds it together is our main cast in so many ways. And I think Chase Masterson, in this guest appearance, does a really wonderful job with that as well. Because once we get on to the latter half of the episode and we get the scenes with Wade and Kelly, and we get the reveal, that Wade makes to Kelly, and we get some of those more emotional moments. They do land, and
Yeah.
it's almost in spite of what has
Right.
come before,
Yes.
as
Yeah.
opposed to being, fully supported by it.
Yeah. There's the great moment where Wade has to reveal who she is in order to get her sister to stop the security alarm before the time runs out on the computer.
Right.
And that scene works, and there's tension, and like, is she going to do it? And again, like, Wade is sort of rolling the dice because she's trying to share memories that they had in order to prove her identity. But it's like, this is a parallel Earth. You don't
Yeah.
necessarily know if any of this stuff happened.
And there's a really wonderful moment when Wade is like, you kissed some boy, this was your first kiss or whatever, and Kelly's like, I didn't kiss him, he ran away. But
Right.
it's almost like the fact that it was that it didn't happen for her, and it did happen this one way for Wade. It almost, that inconsistency seals the deal. It's like
Yeah.
there's this moment of just sort of like, oh my gosh, like
Yes, it was
this
a
is
great
this is
moment. Yeah,
real. Yeah, it's a really wonderful moment,
and
and I
and
I
it's a moment that
appreciated it.
it understands the premise of the show.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it,
What a
it gets
wonderful
the
way to put
premise of the
that.
show. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're kind of few and far between,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
And I think
Um,
that that's one of the things that's so surprising to me is is that, here we are at season 3. You'd think by this point, a lot of shows, they really dial it in. For instance, the Quantum Leap episode I referenced earlier, Leap Home, that's the season 3 premiere. And by
yeah,
season 3, they'd really dialed things in. Now,
yeah,
I would argue, sorry, short digression, that season 3 is not nearly as strong as most people think it is, that season 2 is actually stronger. But it's a digression that we don't need to take. Anyway,
what?
I know, right? But I will say that, most of the time, television series, by the time they hit that 3rd season or so, they've really dialed things in. And for this show to still be struggling with understanding what it is and what it can do,
Right.
and again, part of that is because of the changes that were made that you mentioned earlier. But it's
Yes.
really
Yeah.
unfortunate because the premise is so strong. And you get a dash of Doctor Who, you get a dash of Quantum Leap, you get a dash of this, a dash of that, and you get this, this wonderful ensemble cast. You throw them into these situations, and you would think that there would be enough there to have, a character driven quality to it, as these people have to navigate these situations together with these incredible, sci-fi plots in these alternate Earths where things are just a little different in this way, a little different in that way. But ultimately, it doesn't feel that way. and
Sure.
and I think that, this episode, again, it's got enough of the good to avoid being a not great episode of Sliders, but there's still enough of the, I don't know, the miasma that is Sliders season 3 that drags it down from being like a great episode of television,
Yeah. Something that someone could sit down and watch and say, "Hey, I want to see more of this show."
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which is
Which is what you want
unfortunate.
every episode to be.
Yes.
You want people, you want to gain more fans every week if you can.
Yeah, and because I think of like other episodic, television series that I have loved from the time I was a little boy, like MacGyver, right? There are so
Yeah.
many episodes of MacGyver that I could sit down and watch, and I'd be like, I want to watch more MacGyver,
Right.
and yet with Sliders, it's like so often I feel like I want a show that's not there, and I wish that it
Yes.
was.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that's how I think that's like basically what the Sliders fan base is. They're just, it's like it's the significant other that you've dated, and like, you sort of created an idea of who they were on the first couple of dates, and like, you saw like what you wanted to see, and they did great things, and they took me to a great restaurant, and then we had so much fun, like we went to the batting cages, and that was sort of cool, and like, so, never done that before on a date. But then you get to the point in the relationship where you're like, this person isn't who I want them to be.
yeah.
They're acting crazy. They're doing episodes with electric acid twisters and dune buggies, and now they're doing movie parodies every week.
Well, and even more than that, it's like the X, from years before, that every once in a while you think about, and you think about them in all the best ways, right? And then if you
Maybe
were to
I
be
should give them a call.
right, but if you were to be confronted with them again, you would remember all the reasons why they're an
Right.
X.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and and so I think that, like, again, this episode as a whole, and we haven't even really gotten to the finish, right? But like eventually there's the confrontation with Ted. There's, they've got all the files to bring it all down. Now Kelly's going to be like, elevated to some position. Her dad's proud of her for getting out of the under the shadow of this consumerism and this indentured servitude that they're placing other people under.
Yes, right.
There's a Christmas celebration at the Wells household, and Carol's there with the baby Alexander, and Arturo again brings his story
Very
full
sweet
circle.
moments. Yes,
Oh,
very, very sweet. Yeah.
it's amazing because he tells this devastating story about his mother, his dead mother, lying on top of him, getting pulled off, his father coming back from the war, after years to get him out of the orphanage. And then, he tells her the story about Christmas and about how this, they didn't have a lot of money. It's after the war. Post-war England was tough and hard and dreary. And, and he's made Arturo a gift, and he presents
Yes.
that gift to him, and he's crying and smiling at the same time. And it's like, that's when I knew my father was back. And it's just this
Yeah.
beautiful, beautiful moment. And again, it's John Rhys Davies. It's like, you, sir, deserve so much better.
Well, and not that he was shy about that during
Yeah,
the production
sure.
of the show, and he's spoken, at length about his issues with the declining quality of the series, and he would pin it on the showrunner at the time and the writers. His big beef was that the writers weren't familiar with science fiction.
Mm,
They just were not. They hadn't done the reading.
yeah.
They, and you look at series like Star Trek, where Roddenberry would pluck science fiction
Yeah.
writers, popular science fiction writers, and get them to write for the show
Yeah.
because he wanted people that had ideas. And this is a show that as the weeks passed, was bereft of original ideas. I mean, he told a
Yeah.
story once that he walked into the writer's room, and again, this is just a story that he had told, and he saw them watching like a VHS of the movie Species, and they were saying, "Oh, we could take this scene and do something like that. We could take this scene and do something like that." When you realize, like, oh, you know, you folks aren't you're coming at this in a different way.
Yeah.
Like, you're not coming at it with ideas first. You're coming at it with, this looks cool.
Right.
And
Right.
spoiler alert, it's not going to look cool because you don't have the budget for it to look cool.
No.
So you should leave that right at the door. The worst thing you could do for a show that does not have the kind of budget that like the A-list shows have is to try and focus on making things look awesome. You have
Right.
to focus on the story and the characters.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So recently, as a result of some of the paths that I've been going down and some of the stuff that I've been doing for the show, uh, I have been reading about Bruceploitation movies,
Uh-huh.
which the phenomenon after Bruce Lee's untimely death is that there were a lot of people out there that were like, what are we going to do? We got to make money.
Right.
So they went and they got Bruce Lee, and they got, Bruce Lee Tung, and they
Yeah.
got all these guys to be Bruce Lee basically and make churn out all of these movies. And the thing is, all these movies were terrible,
Yeah.
terrible movies, low production values, cribbed scenes from, Bruce Lee's movies, and just put these new characters in them. Would literally just have the characters walk down the street and get jumped by people for no other reason than we have to have a fight scene now. I mean,
Yeah.
just awful, awful movies, right? But they're
Yes.
borrowing from these stone cold classics, right? Like
Yeah.
Fist of Fury is a stone cold classic. Enter the Dragon is a stone cold classic. Like, and to the point where they were literally like taking audio tracks of Bruce Lee's, famous wall, that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
and putting them in over these other actors. And it's the same symptom, right? It's that idea that it's like, here's this really great thing, this really cool thing, and if I try to do that same thing, I'll be able to, to fool somebody and make some money off of it.
Right.
And what a horrible way to treat a wonderful premise like Sliders, because at the end of the day, again, like I was saying earlier, you had an opportunity here, and instead of trying to just turn it into this thing where it's like, well, let's try and sell some ads,
Right.
appealing to whatever is popular at the drive-in right now. It's such a strange choice. And the fascinating thing is it's like, here's this wonderful sci-fi show. And, had they gone the route of like a Roddenberry or a Rod Serling or something and pulled in like writers who knew what they were doing, who got the assignment, what we could have seen, right? Or
Sure.
alternatively, to have done what Quantum Leap did, right? And what Don Bellisario wanted to do and Deborah Pratt wanted to do, which was use the sci-fi element as a vehicle to tell very, relatable stories. Like they could have done something like that as well. And
Right.
instead, yeah, it oftentimes it ends up just kind of being this schlock, and it's unfortunate because
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
if anything, John Rhys Davies proves in this episode that had the material been this consistently good for him, had he been able to have these types of moments, you would have had just an incredible character, an incredible performance, which you already get, right? But had you been able to build around that, build off of that, just imagine what you would have gotten, more consistently out of Sabrina Lloyd, out of Clivant Derricks, out of Jerry O'Connell. Like it would have really been something, I think, that we would talk about in a way that wasn't just this nostalgia driven, what a cool premise, there's some good episodes
Right.
in there. Yeah,
Yeah. And look at pop culture now. Like, look at like the Marvel movies. Everything's about the multiverse.
right. Right.
You know.
To the point where apparently even very recently, it was teased that there could be a Sliders revival or reboot or
Yeah.
something, and
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I don't know if that will ever happen. I don't. If it does, I don't know that it would happen in a way that like fans of the classic series would love.
right.
You know, because fans of the classic series, they want to see. It's like with everything. Like you want to see your friends again, and you want there to be a resolution.
Right.
There was a big reason why a lot of Quantum Leap fans did not tune in to the revival series
Yeah.
because they wanted Sam and Al, they wanted their friends, and they wanted that story to be resolved. They weren't interested in picking up the premise with new characters, which
Yeah.
I think is short sighted. I think that just because you loved one version of a thing doesn't mean that you can't love another version of a thing.
No, if Star
Um,
Trek The Next Generation came along today, it would never have survived more than 2 seasons.
Well, people were, they spit their vitriol at Star Trek: The Next Generation back
Of
in
course
the
they did.
days,
The
but
big
they couldn't do it online. That was the
Yeah.
thing.
The
Yeah,
big difference is that it wasn't it was something that was published as a one-off article, and it didn't get to the studios, it didn't get to the money makers the way that it did, because there was still a little bit of artistic integrity and a little bit of this idea of like, we can keep doing this, we have these people
right,
under contract, we have the so
right,
yeah, it's very strange to me. And I think that like season 3 of Picard is another great example where you have something that is actually is good, very good in a lot of ways, right? But it's also a little overly fan wanky. There are some elements of it that I just kind of feel like, okay, you're doing this because you have the opportunity to do this, as opposed to it makes good sense for storytelling. And while I could certainly understand the arguments that season 1 and season 2 did not ascend to the heights that a lot of people wanted them to, at least they were telling, at least season 1 in particular was telling
yeah,
a new story, right?
yeah,
And telling a story in a way that felt almost more emotionally satisfying in some ways than even season 3 did, which I thought,
sure,
because of all the, the great nods and because of all the great moments. But the thing is out of season 3, what I wanted more than anything, was to see the 7 of 9 show. You know what I mean? To see the
right,
to like I
yeah,
didn't walk away from season 3 feeling like I'd seen the the end of the Next Generation, because quite frankly, I saw that 30 years ago.
yeah,
So I think that, again, to your point also about like Quantum Leap, is it's like, was I disappointed that we didn't get Sam at some point? Yeah, of course I was. I absolutely wanted to see that. But I'll never forget, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, I was on the phone with Drew Lindo, and this is a little over a year ago. This would have been about 3 months before the finale aired. And
okay,
and I think they had just finished shooting it, they had just wrapped shooting it, and he and he told me that they had some some pretty special things cooked up and some pretty amazing things. And one of the things that he said to me is, he's like, by the end of this episode, I just want people to walk away from it knowing that we didn't need Scott Bakula to be great. And I'll be damned, they proved it, because I that's how I felt after those last few episodes.
without a doubt, yeah,
And not only that, and it's one of the things that I'm so pissed off about when I think about that show, is that we didn't get a season 3, because the way it ended, all it made me want was more, and it made me want their Quantum Leap. It
Yes.
made me want their brand of Quantum Leap. And I think that that's the thing, is like in this day and age, because of the way that things are nostalgia driven, and because we have, the ability to so easily go back and watch something, and you have new fans of Quantum Leap being born every day because they watch the old series on streaming, and then they watch the new series on streaming. And it's the same thing with something like Sliders or a million other shows that are out there. But the thing is they get so married to that, they want to see the continuation of that.
Sure.
They
Right.
want to see more of that. Unfortunately, I feel like it takes away as opposed to giving back to, and yeah, who knows what Sliders would look like. But
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? But
yeah,
things were looking pretty nice for our 4 sliders by the end of this episode,
yeah,
as
and
they have
Wade had some...
single-handedly taken down capitalism. Uh,
and Wade has a nice moment with her dad and
yes.
her sister before they leave, and it's yeah,
I will
yeah.
say I feel like there's a bit of a Star Trek original series element where it's like Kirk's like, well, I destroyed the computer that was running this world for the last 1,000 years. Good luck.
Yes, yeah. That's something I've thought often about this show in particular as well. Is that notion of like they go in, they fix something, and then they just
Yeah.
leave, and it's like, well, but who's gonna? That's one of the things I've always appreciated about Doctor Who is it, like, not always. Don't get me wrong, but like in a lot of episodes of Doctor Who, there's this element of him kind of saying like, well, I've destroyed your way of life, but you know what?
Yes.
You're gonna make it. You're gonna find
And the
a new
people
way,
are like, please stay and lead us. We could use your counsel. He's like, I'm not into that.
It's like, yeah, no, I'm sorry. It's not, I'm not,
I'm
I'm not
not
that, I'm not
monogamous.
that guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And even Quantum Leap at its best, for instance, it was the anniversary of Thou Shalt Not recently, which is one of my favorite episodes of Quantum Leap ever.
So good.
And one of the things I love about that episode is that when Sam leaps out, things aren't all fixed and wrapped up in a bow. Like, this family is still hurting. This family still has a lot of healing to do. But the thing is he's set them on the path to do that. And I love that notion of kind of like, it's not about Sam going in there and fixing everything, tying it up in a bow, and then leaping out. Instead, it's about, I've just put them in the right direction,
Yes, absolutely.
But anyway, when it comes to Sliders, hey, right, they toppled capitalism. Now figure it out for yourselves. We're gonna go slide out of here.
Right. At least at this one mall in Southern California.
Exactly. Because we'll see
Right.
what happens. This one mall that looks like every other mall in 1996 America, by the way, even with the Victoria's Secret and your outdoor grotto, and like, it is funny because
it's a parallel world, it's very similar.
And you know what? The funny thing is those are the types of production values that I can easily excuse, right? Those are the types of things that I'm just sort of like, oh, I don't care about that. Like, I might crack a joke about it, but I don't care about that. It's the other stuff that makes me scratch my head. Anyway, all right. So here we are. Season's greetings. Season 3, episode 12 of Sliders. Greedings. I think we've done a pretty good job of summing things up. JJ, do you have anything else to add?
I would just say that, again, Sliders as a show is so near and dear to my heart. I really loved it when it was on the air, warts and all. I followed it even into the sci-fi era, where they completely changed the premise of the show from getting home to fighting the Cro-Mag invasion. And I do feel like it's a show that I don't think is ever going to have the kind of resurgence that some other older shows have because of a lot of the elements that we talked about.
Sure.
But I think it's one that, especially the first couple of seasons and a handful of episodes from the third year, and honestly, from a sci-fi stance, from a storytelling stance, there are great episodes that come after that too.
I like some of the Cro-Mag stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is a show that deserves a fresh take. Whether that take involves Jerry O'Connell or, Clement Derricks or John Rhys Davies or Sabrina Lloyd, I don't know. Can we have our cake and eat it too? Can you do a revival of a show that keeps the thing that was working but distances itself from all the things that weren't? Maybe. But I just want to say, like, if we sounded overly harsh in the review of this episode, It's from a place of love, and I think any Sliders fan, worth their Einstein Rosen Podolsky Bridge, uh, feels the same way.
Say that three times fast.
There you go. Yes, I think they feel the
Yeah.
same way. They like to celebrate the elements of the show that were unabashedly great, and the characters, and then they like to complain about all the stuff that didn't work, and there was
Yeah.
plenty of it.
Right. And I think that, one of the things that I'll kind of say to sum things up is that sometimes the potential of something being great is a hallmark of how good it was to begin with, because
Sure.
I wouldn't sit here and say if only, because it could have been if there wasn't something there to begin with. And
Right.
I think that that's the thing about Sliders. There is something there to begin with. And
Yes.
I think that even if on the whole, based off of what I have seen and what I've read, it misses the mark more often than it hits it. The fact that it is able to hit it, and the fact that the premise itself is one that appeals to me enough to say I own the first 4 seasons on DVD, and I want to go back and rewatch them all. Right?
But
Yeah,
do
exactly.
you own
No,
this season?
I don't. I don't. It's like $75 on eBay. And while there are certain things that I have bought recently on eBay for prices which I will not actually admit to, that is probably not going to be one of them. But
I don't do it.
no, I'm not going to do it. But with all due affection to Sliders, which it does occupy a very interesting space for me personally in my own eclectic sci-fi appreciations, because again it sits adjacent to Doctor Who. It sits
Yeah.
adjacent to Quantum Leap, and those are 2 things that I love dearly. And
Yeah.
there's a lot to enjoy and a lot to love about Sliders. And while chief among them for me might be John Rhys Davies, there's more to it than that. And so I look forward to hopefully one day watching the whole series and not just having a smattering of episodes here and there. But that said, getting to talk about this episode specifically, it is such a wonderful encapsulation of just my overall feelings about the show, which is like parts of it really, really, really good, parts of it not so much, but the potential for it to be great exists. And I think
Without a doubt.
that to me is one of the remarkable things about this 30-year-old show that is Sliders.
Yes. I would suggest wholeheartedly watch seasons 1 and 2. Watch them in the correct story order, which you're not going to find on the original DVD sets. Look, you can look it up. I used to have a little list that I would put into my DVD so that I
Yeah.
could keep track of that. And then, push through season 3. That there's a certain order that you could watch that in as well. Actually, uh, Double Cross was meant to be the season premiere of the 3rd season,
Right.
but ended up airing, I think, 2nd or 3rd. And I think that I'd love to do a rewatch of Sliders now in my copious spare time.
Right.
So so it might be
Same.
a couple of years until I can really take on that
Right.
that goal.
I'll just keep nudging you.
Yeah, dream big.
Right.
Almost through the pilot again. Almost through the pilot. Just gotta grab the baby. All right, they're about to slide.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We'll just do it in like 15-minute increments. It's like I watched the first 15 minutes of episode 4 today. What did you think?
There you go. Or we could, some people watch or they listen to podcasts on like double speed. We could just try to watch these episodes so that they are only 15 minutes long.
Yeah, I would just
pick up most of the dialogue.
I just slow him down with John Rhys Davies just so I can.
There you go.
Soak
Maybe
him in.
You could get a cut of the episodes where it's the Arturo cut.
Or it's just the Arturo
cut.
Yeah, the Arturo
with no
cut.
context.
Oh my gosh.
Then you can imagine what the rest of the episode's like.
Yeah, just around.
Bring whatever production values you want to it. The writing could be stellar.
Exactly. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter what's happening. Oh my gosh. All right. Well, before we jump the shark, if we haven't already, JJ, thank you so much. It's always such a pleasure to do this. We always spend far more time than we anticipate talking about these things, but I'm glad that we do because it's such a joy to be able to chat with you and hang out with you. And I hope that we get to do it again very soon. And who knows, maybe we'll have already done it. Maybe by the time people see this, we'll have already done something else that has come out.
Now you're thinking fourth dimensionally. That's great.
We'll see what happens. You never know.
No, Thank you for having me, Sam, and thanks to the folks at Fandom Entanglement for doing this rewatch stuff and giving us a reason to talk about this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you are watching us on the Fates Wide Wheel YouTube channel, then I encourage you to head on over to the Fandom Entanglement YouTube channel, catch the rest of the season's Greedings reviews that they're going to be doing, which will be a fun little holiday thing for all you Sliders fans. And if you are watching this on the Fandom Entanglement channel, then please head on over to Fates Wide Wheel YouTube channel, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'm doing lots of stuff that's very different for the channel. It started off, of course, as a Quantum Leap podcast, covered all of the original series, and then got to cover the revival series, including a multitude of interviews and episode reviews with writers, directors, actors, including the main cast and the stars of the show. So please feel free to check out any of that content if you're interested in Quantum Leap. And if not, there's plenty of other great stuff on there. JJ and I actually did a Christmas episode a couple of years ago for the Twilight Zone, which is one of my favorite episodes, not only of the Twilight Zone, but the Fates Wide Wheel. The poster that he created is just gorgeous. And in addition to that, I've been doing a lot of unboxings and reviews of a multitude of different films. I recently started off with some Hong Kong action films like Hard Boiled, Armor of God 2, Operation Condor, Jackie Chan. I got some other cool stuff coming up soon, including, which will already have dropped by the time you see this, but a Star Trek The Motion Picture 4K retro unboxing and review. And I'm really excited to be doing that stuff. It's something that I've always kind of flirted with, and now to actually kind of dive in and do it has been a lot of fun. Those episodes tend to be a lot shorter. So check those out, and stay tuned for more to come, because there's a lot of really cool stuff, at least I think anyway, that I've been having a lot of fun with, that I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So JJ, thank you again. Always wonderful, always a pleasure. And I hope to do this again soon.
Same. Thank you,
All
Sam.
right. Yeah, absolutely. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, stay safe out there, and always, always slide responsibly.